Ah, good old red, blue, and yellow, a time where things were much simpler and quite frankly, outright broken. You'd think a battling system before EV spreads, items, abilities, and other extra things we have in the modern games would mean it would be simpler and more balanced. But that isn't the case at all. In this video, I will be explaining Gen 1 battling and its major differences from the later gens. In this part, I will be covering the differences in its core mechanics. As for the next two parts, in part 2, I will cover the most notable Pokemon who rose because of those mechanics, and in part 3, I will cover the most notable differences in individual moves, so stay tuned for those two videos in the near future. Alright, let's get to it. Starting with core mechanics, I'm sure you're familiar with each Pokemon having their own stats of HP, attack, defense, special defense, and speed. Well, the thing that separates Gen 1 from the rest is that special attack and defense were one singular special stat. So what exactly would result of this? Well, it basically means a Pokemon's special attack was also its special defense and vice versa, so they could dish out just as much as they could take. So for example, Chansey has a base 105 special defense stat and a base 35 special attack stat in the later games. But before the special attack and defense split in Gen 2, she had a 105 special stat, meaning her base special attack and defense were both 105. In other words, it meant Chansey was more of a tank in Gen 1 as opposed to a wall. Chansey and other Pokemon with high special attack in the later games benefited from having their special attack also be their special defense or vice versa. Though that's all I will say about the special stat for now, but trust me, we will get to the Pokemon who could have used that in the near future. Next on our list of things are critical hits. In Gen 1, landing a critical hit was based off of speed rather than a fixed rate for all Pokemon. This means that faster Pokemon had a higher chance of landing critical hits over slower ones, some reaching critical hit rates of even 20% or more. In addition to this, the moves with high critical hit ratios being Slash, Razor Leaf, Crab Hammer, and Karate Chop had an 8 times higher critical hit ratio than normal. And on a fast Pokemon like Persian, for example, who already has a critical hit ratio of 22.46, means landing a critical hit is almost nearly guaranteed. In addition to this, critical hits not only ignored the stat changes of your opponent like in later gens, but they also ignored your stat changes as well. So for example, if you had a Charizard who has Sword Dance twice, which multiplies its attack by 3, you would do less damage if you landed a critical hit, which multiplies damage by 2 even after those buffs, because landing a crit ignores your Sword Dance buffs. Though on the flip side, if you were attacking something like Golem who had defense curled like 6 times, it would ignore those buffs as well. Now we move on to the status ailment, starting with Freeze. Unlike the future gens, getting frozen in Gen 1 was basically death, because there was only 3 ways of thawing out: getting hit by a fire move, your opponent using haze on your frozen Pokemon or vice versa, and using an ice heal. That's right, there was no way of thawing out over time or thawing yourself out by using a fire move. So it would really suck if by chance during key moments of the battle, your key to victory all of a sudden just became nothing more than death fodder. Next is Sleep. In Gen 1, Sleep could last anywhere from 1 turn to 7 turns, as opposed to shorter amounts of sleep time in later gens. At least the sleep counter doesn't reset when you switch out though. Now that's all well and good aside from the 7 turns, but the biggest difference from other gens is that if your Pokemon is asleep, it has to spend an entire turn waking up. This basically means faster Pokemon like Gengar could simply put the opposing Pokemon to sleep again after they wake up, since by using a turn to wake up, it could not do a move to retaliate, so you better hope Hypnosis misses this time. Fun fact, the moves Wrap, Fire Spin, Clamp, and Bind also require a whole turn to be released from should a Pokemon fall victim to it, though I will talk about that more in part 3 when I cover moves. As for Poison, a Poison Pokemon only takes 1/16 damage instead of 1/8 like in later gens, and will take damage either after doing an attack or at the end of the turn. However, if the Poison Pokemon manages to feint its opponent, it will not take poison damage. This also goes for Burn. Also, if a Pokemon is badly poisoned by Toxic, meaning its poison gets worse over time, switching out or using the move Haze will return it to regular poison, which is why Toxic wasn't as good in Gen 1. If a Pokemon is paralyzed, its speed drops to 25% of its current speed and has a 25% chance of getting fully paralyzed during a turn. Though this sounds pretty standard, both paralysis and burn are subject to the stat modification glitch. Now this is sort of complicated, but the TLDR is, if a Pokemon that is either burned or paralyzed uses a stat boosting move like Sword Dance or Agility, its attack or speed will become 2 times of how it is normally, and does not calculate the boost from its current attack and speed after being burnt or paralyzed, completely nullifying its stat drop. So what happens to that stat drop, you may ask? Well, after boosting attack or speed, the stat drop that you once had is applied to the opposing Pokemon instead. Though despite this, Paralysis was still a powerful status ailment considering fast top tier Pokemon like Tauros kind of need that speed to beat other Pokemon. Now I will talk about types. In Gen 1 and subsequently Gen 2 and 3, in terms of attacking moves, all types were either only physical or only special. For example, all fire, water, and electric type moves are special moves, meaning they utilize a special stat to do damage. By contrast, all normal fighting and bug moves are physical, meaning they they used the attack stat to do damage. Though the type differences from other gens don't end there, because this is Gen 1. Because of a glitch, Bug was super effective against Poison instead of Poison resisting it. And speaking of Bug, during Gen 1, Bug moves were the only thing that hit Psychic types for super effective damage. Too bad there was only 3 of them, being Twin Needle, Pin Missile, and Leech Life, which were all weak and only learned by a few Pokemon. Additionally, instead of being super effective against the all-powerful Psychic types, Ghost type moves do not affect Psychic type Pokemon. Which explains why I was confused as a kid when Ash was trying to get a Ghost type Pokemon to fight Sabrina's Psychic types. For these reasons, this is why the Psychic type was basically the best typing in the game, because it was only weak to a type that only had 3 moves and was resisted only by itself. Finally, closing out this video, I will talk about the infamous 1 out of 256 uncertainty. What this number refers to is that despite certain moves having 100% accuracy, in Red, Blue, and Yellow there is still a chance for these moves to miss. This is because of how Red, Blue, and Yellow calculate certainty. When a move is used, the game will randomly generate a number between 0 and 255. If the number is less than 255, the move will hit. Thanks to this, there is always a 1 out of 256 chance that the move will miss, even if it is supposed to have 100% accuracy. The only attacking move that is exempt for this is the move Swift, because it completely ignores this certainty check. And that's all I got for today. Tune in next time for part 2, where we go over the most notable Pokemon in the first generation and why they were able to excel in the original games. Thank you so much for watching, and if you liked the video and want to see more, subscribe to False Sweat Gaming for more weekly content. Also, I want to know, which of these mechanics do you think affected Gen 1 battles the most in relation to the other generations? Let me know in the comment section down below. Alright, that's all I have for now. Peace out, everyone.